Good evening, and welcome to Morning Gospel Fuel with Mr. G. It is Tuesday, January 26th, and it is the feast day of Saint Timothy and Saint Titus, who were both disciples of Saint Paul, whose conversion we celebrated yesterday. And Saint Timothy and Saint Titus, they were both bishops and martyrs of the church. St. Timothy was stoned to death, and he is the patron saint against stomach and intestinal issues, while St. Titus he was martyred and a bishop as well. I don't know how he was martyred, but I do know he was the patron of Crete, which is an island just outside of Greece, and he is also the patron of the U.S. Army Chaplain Corps. Today's Gospel is from Mark chapter 3, verses 31 through 35. Let's begin in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. His mother and his brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent word to him and called him. A crowd seated around him told him, "Your mother and your brothers and your sisters are outside asking for you." But he said to them in reply, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" And looking around at those seated in the circle, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother." Alrighty, so we've got Jesus and his family, which there's many critiques on false claims, thinking that Jesus had siblings, biological siblings. With or without Mary, or with his father Joseph. But there is nothing that confirms that. It is all presumption. But we talk about Jesus and his family, and he's talking about, again, he's not talking about biological. Jesus doesn't really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't really care about his biological family. I mean, he does, but his main goal is to become family members with everybody in heaven someday, in eternal peace and comfort and joy and timelessness. So he says at the very last line, "For whoever does the will of God, they are my brother and my sister and my mother." And that's what we're all called to do, is do God's will, so that we can all be at the heavenly banquet as one big family someday in heaven. So the challenge today, since I'm off my rocker, and it's been a long day, if I'm being honest, a lot of academics and prayer, but I'm just going to read the book on Saint Timothy out of this book, as it talks about virtue relative to family. So it ties in really well, I think, with the gospel today. So here we go, on Saint Timothy and virtue. One of the first things parents do when they see their newborn is try to figure out who the baby resembles. As exciting as it is to discover the baby has grandpa's eyes or his dad's dimples, physical characteristics are literally only skin deep. The important characteristics, those that shape personality, take time to develop. Will the child be trustworthy? Will the child be patient? Most important, will the child have faith in God? St. Timothy's mother Eunice and his grandmother Lois were women of great faith. Undoubtedly, they were delighted when, even as a lad, Timothy took an interest in the Scriptures. Later, when he became one of St. Paul's disciples and closest friends, they must have felt a sense of pride that their own deep faith had been passed on. Recently, the idea that virtue can be taught has made a comeback. However, such virtues as honesty, goodness, and courage cannot merely be taught. They must also be lived. The old writing adage, "show, don't tell," applies to life as well. We can tell our children about virtues, but for them to become a reality in their lives, they must first become a reality in ours. And the question for the challenge is, what legacy are we leaving our families? And what values are we passing on to our children? I choose one virtue to make a reality in my life. So there we go. Find a church, find a virtue, pick a virtue, and start living by that virtue. Have a great day. God bless. Keep it real. Amen, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.